Right.
And one of the things they talk about all the time is they'll have interviews with porn stars who are out of the industry now and about how abusive it was.
Mm-hmm.
And yet, like you said, we're making it normal. Like that's normalizing abuse.
Right.
It's this idea that, the sexual interaction between a female and a male has to be violent,
Yep.
has to be aggressive,
Yep.
has to be painful. And it's this idea that
Dominating,
like all of this stuff,
Yep.
humiliating, like all of this stuff has become normal.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to Fireside Chat, a production of Allen Creek Community Church, or AC3 as we like to call ourselves. In today's discussion, we want to dive deeply into a topic of concern for disciples of Jesus or for those who are investigating faith in Christ, so we can chart a path of faithfulness in a world of uncertainty. To that end, we hope this conversation sparks your interest and your learning. If you want to see more content like this, please like and subscribe, and we look forward to reading your comments below and getting your take. Now, let's begin.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to Fireside Chat. Alex, look at this. We're right by the not hot fire. And this is the audio blog for AC3, where we just kind of take some time to go in depth on something, usually looking at a video or an article that takes some topic that's super relevant to the Christian faith and walking out being a disciple of Jesus. And today I have with me our Associate Pastor Alex Gelly, Associate Pastor of Youth and Outreach at AC3. And boy, we have a hot button topic today, so maybe we should throw out a PG-13 warning. How about that?
I think so.
So the topic is going to be pornography, and we're just going to kind of get into it. We're going to talk a little bit about the effects of it, and also specifically an article put out by the Colson Center that discusses just this fascinating feedback we're getting from the generation whose access to porn has been easier than ever. I mean, it got easier and easier and easier the more it's been produced, right? It's not like there's ever been a generation that didn't know pornography. Just as an aside, have you seen any of the wall art that they've uncovered from Pompeii that got buried under Mount Vesuvius?
I'm imagining it was pretty crude.
It was just incredible. It's basically just pornography. So what it was basically a brothel, and then the imagery was used to, first of all, inspire clientele to visit the brothel, and then it was also used as a menu. So like you could go into this brothel and the pornography is a menu. So all that to say that pornography's always been a thing, right? The use of sexual imagery to incite lust, which is basically, is that a good definition? I'm not sure. It's not a bad definition.
I think so.
Yeah.
I think that's exactly what it was designed for.
So it's always been with us.
Yeah.
But the question is now, what are we doing to a whole generation when access to it is easier and easier, and the age of access is younger and younger. So the article starts like this. Not long ago, most non-Christians treated pornography as a harmless expression of sexual freedom. For half a century, Hugh Hefner's Playboy philosophy dominated, teaching people to wink at porn use. And then the comment, children discovering a relative's stash became a popular trope on TV and film and was played off for laughs. And I can tell you that actually is very anecdotal. So my first exposure to pornography, probably 13, I think. I was on a hike with my brothers, or with my older brother, into the woods where there was a hunting cabin and there was a pornography stash. And then there was like 6 of us boys, and we just sat there and consumed pornography for a while. So that was my first exposure. So 13. Now, what's the trend on that, Alex? Because you're working some of the stats on this.
Yeah. So currently they're saying the average age of a girl or boy to be exposed to pornography is 9 years old. It is actually going down, and that's due to the fact that kids have more and more access to these. Right. And so it's not so much that kids are going out of their way looking for this stuff. That does happen.
Yeah.
But a lot of it's just stumbling upon it, right? Like you type into your search bar something super innocent, and it might pop up with something.
There's some very accidental discoveries.
You might find something, and that's why I really help parents. Like as a youth pastor, I really help parents on how to monitor their technology and how to monitor kids' technologies, because I realized that happened. Because that happened to me.
Right.
When I was in 5th grade, so I was probably about 10, 11 years old,
Yeah.
one of my buddies looked up a nudist camp,
Hmm.
and that was my first exposure to pornography.
Yeah.
And after that, I got addicted to
Right.
it, and I was just enthralled with it.
Yeah.
And I went down a really dark place.
What are some of the things that break? Where you and I will talk from a male perspective, obviously. But just generally, what are some of the things that break in our sexuality with early sexualization that happens in pornography? What's going on there? Maybe you can talk from both an emotional, social point of view, and even from a
Neurological point.
neurological point of view.
Well, I think the first thing we have to realize is that God created sex to be this beautiful thing between a man and a woman. And one of the things that he did is he created humans to enjoy sex. We are one of the only mammals that enjoy it. I think dolphins do too, is what I hear. But
Apparently bonobo monkeys also.
yeah,
all
yeah.
About it.
But anyway, so my point being is that God didn't design us on accident to enjoy it.
Yeah.
It was a gift. It was a gift to us. And so what we're actually enjoying is dopamine hitting to our brain. And dopamine is the positive receptor that says what you are doing is good.
Yeah.
This is a good thing. This is a reward system.
Yeah,
It's a
yeah.
reward system. And so this is what keeps us producing humans.
Yeah. It's like, yes.
It's like,
Nature, reward.
yeah, rewarding.
Keep doing this.
Keep
we
doing
want
this.
more humans.
So what breaks in pornography and early sexualization is that it's not used for that.
Mm-hmm.
It's not used for the design that God had given it. And so ultimately what you're doing is you're starting to get a reward system whenever you want it.
Right.
And that's what addiction to pornography typically is, or
Right.
addiction to sex or anything of the sort, is that you're now in a reward system that impacts your brain. And if anytime you start to feel sad, it actually talks about this in the article later on. It talks about people don't know how to deal with pain.
Yeah.
So what they do is they go to this thing.
Right.
But what it does is it causes more pain.
Mm-hmm.
And I love this quote right here. It's from one of the most famous musical artists of our time right now, Billie Eilish. And she's not a Christian.
No.
She's actually pretty obviously against Christianity.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And she said this. She confessed to being one of those children harmed by pornography. In an interview, Eilish described her first encounter at age 11.
Mm-hmm.
So that's just,
Again, just like we're saying, it's going down, down, down.
and I think it really destroyed my brain.
Wow. Okay, wait. Just say that. Start again. She said.
I think it really destroyed my brain, and I feel incredibly devastated that I was exposed to so much porn. So she understands this. She understands that.
Okay, and just like pause for a second on this because again, you underline this very true. She's not a Christian, so she has no worldview framework to say this is bad.
Nope.
This is morally offensive to a God who's designed sex in a certain way. Blah blah blah. That's how Christians frame this conversation. She's just saying this broke me. It's just broke
From
me.
a scientific perspective, my brain wasn't designed for this.
Yeah.
It wasn't designed to have a continuous dopamine hit. One of the things we talk about with people who are in recovery for pornography addiction is that if you take a porn addict's brain and a cocaine addict's brain and you put them right next to each other, they are identical.
Incredible.
And that's due to the dopamine hits that you're getting into both brain systems.
So the exact same dynamics going on in a drug addict with hardcore drugs is going on when you're consuming pornography.
Yeah, it's a drug.
You are making yourself an addict. It's absolutely a similar. It's not like addiction.
It
is addiction in the very same way. Wow, that's just really incredible. And again, she's again coming at this from this non-Christian perspective, recognizing.
And she's a female. I think that's incredibly important too.
Exactly. And that I guess we should just note that female pornography usage has also just skyrocketed. Near zero.
Yeah, it was at I think it increased 65% over the last 5 years.
65%. So is that a 65% increase, or is it up to 65% of girls, females are consuming pornography?
65%.
Because I know the number for men is in the 90s.
It's 95.
Yeah, it's in the 90s.
But 65% of reported usage. in females.
Wow. 65% report pornography usage. That's just really, really incredible. Especially, you know, it breaks down the trope a little bit that men are exclusively visually oriented or whatever, that women can be caught in this too. There's something going on internally as they're drawn to this. And sometimes the very darkness of it, like she says that there was stuff on that she consumed on the screen gave her nightmares and led to her
Not saying no.
not saying no. So in other words, believing that what she was consuming in pornography was normal, and therefore in her actual sexual interactions with live humans, it suddenly became this is normative and abusive. And so abuse was like cooked into it.
That's
Talk
it.
about that.
That's Rick. That is it. Pornography will take you further than you want to go, faster than you want to get there. And so one of the things that Fight the New Drug, it's an organization that their whole job is fighting pornography. They call it Fight the New Drug. And they're not a Christian-based organization.
Right.
And one of the things they talk about all the time is they'll have interviews with porn stars who are out of the industry now and about how abusive it was. And yet, like you said, we're making it normal. Like that's normalizing abuse.
Right.
It's this idea that, you know, the sexual interaction between a female and a male has to be violent, has to be aggressive, has to be painful. And it's this idea that
Dominating,
like all of this stuff, humiliating, like all of this stuff has become normal. And for someone who maybe has no one speaking into their life about what good relationships look like, what good sexual relationships will look like, because parents are afraid to talk about it. And one of the things, well, we'll touch that later. But
So jumping on that, there is a connective tissue then between this pornography epidemic and the current trans phenomena. Because the trans phenomena is most pronounced in girls. When we know that, right? And so that just FYI, if you're looking into this. So the idea that of someone being uncomfortable in their own body, right? So they're uncomfortable with their own biological sex was almost exclusively a male phenomena in the prior world, and almost exclusively and like just an utter fraction of a fraction of the population. So like way under 1% and mostly boys. Okay. And now, as we probably know, and I don't know, you should know if you don't already, that the number of people who claim to have gender dysphoria has risen in the hundreds of percent, up to the point where 1 in 6 now would claim to be non-binary, and most of them are girls.
Yeah, there's a great book that you recommended, Rick, to me, and it was called Irreversible Damage, and encourage you guys to read it. I mean, and then look at other stuff as well. But yeah, it's primarily in our female population.
Okay, so connective tissue now. The porn epidemic with this. If pornography usage is going up, 65% usage by girls, and you have these abusive images like Billie Eilish is saying, this is stuff like, I thought it was normal, degrading, extreme, humiliating. And now think about young girls, they're 10, they're 11, they're 12, they're 13. They're going through this massive puberty transition. In no society, I'm guessing, on planet Earth, and in no time in history have women, girls going through that transition be perfectly fine with that transition and never had body image issues. Right? So in every world, in
boys
every time, boys do too, obviously, but you know, girls
way
being
more prominent.
and for interesting reasons, right? They're judged more on their physical looks and all that kind of stuff. So what a toxic mix, Alex.
So bad.
Right? You got the pornography thing.
And what pornography says is, in order for me to feel loved, I have to do this.
Okay, right. So now you're just piling on, man.
I'm sorry.
Well, but you're absolutely making the point, right? So you got this pornography epidemic. You've got the natural transition that feeds on female insecurity. You've got the messages in pornography that are, if you're a girl and you're engaged in sex, your role is to be humiliated, abused, and used, and that's normal, and make sure you please guys, and if you want to be accepted, and this is how it happens, and all girls just do this stuff. So how many women, girls, let's say, becoming women, get those messages and say, you know what? I don't think I like being a girl.
Right? Yeah.
I don't think I want to be a girl.
I wouldn't want to be one either
One-
in that scenario.
One junior high girl said to me, this is fairly recently, she said, I don't want to, she was struggling with her gender identity, and then you've got the messages that automatically then affirm that if you're questioning, that automatically puts you in a category of special, and we have to affirm. So she's, so right away she's got those messages going on, but then when pressed on this, because there was nothing else about this girl that I would have deemed, knew her quite well, that I would have deemed to be, to be a true gender dysphoria.
Yeah.
Like there was a true wrestling with, sort of a expressing her feminine side or whatever. And so when I kind of pressed on this in a counseling environment, I said, so why? Like, what makes you feel disassociated with your biological sex? And she says, I don't want to be a sandwich maker. First thing she said. And I thought, okay, this is 2023.
Right.
In what
You can be a CEO,
in
man.
what universe have you been told that that's what it means to be a woman? But then further, it's like, and she said something to the effect of, I don't want to be abused, or I don't want to be the person that's not in power or not. And so the connection between her early exposure to pornography and the role that it's an automatic disassociation.
Yeah.
This is not rocket science to me.
No.
Like, this is not like, the great mystery of the transgender, the explosion of dysphoria.
No.
Why wouldn't you have an explosion of dysphoria when to be a woman means what Billie Eilish found out, which is, this is what it means. It means abuse, humiliation, and all the things.
Yeah, and I think to go off of that, Rick, it's like, and parents aren't talking to their kids about it.
Right.
Like, and most of the time, it's because their parents are struggling with it themselves.
Yeah.
And so it's one of the things I always tell people is, man, and this isn't obviously just happening with kids, this is happening with everybody, but the kids are where they get addicted, right? It's that moment where they get introduced to it. And so when you're talking to your kids about the birds and the bees, the sex talk, I think you automatically have to bring in pornography into that.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason is because you got to say, look at this, man. This is, just so you know, there's people in the world that distort this thing
Yes.
and make it something it's not.
Right.
And like having that conversation over and over again to where, like, I have a daughter, she's young, and I plan on when she's older being like, this is how boys are supposed to treat you.
Yeah, we're going to have this conversation.
And this is what they're thinking is reality. This is not reality.
And parents, you should just know that conversation is never not going to be scary, and it's never not going to be awkward.
Yeah, right?
Even
they're going to hate it.
Even in the most, in the best relationship environment where you got a really good the relationships on a great foundation, it's still going to be awkward. But you got to press through. Like Alex is absolutely right. You've got to address this thing because it is the 800-pound gorilla in the room. You've got to address it. When my boys were going through this, one of the things I wanted them to be aware of that I wasn't, which was the dark underside of, I'm going off the article here a little bit, but the dark underside of messaging in the church to Christian boys. So the way it went for me, and you tell me if this is your experience, the way it went for me was, okay, there I am, I'm going through puberty, my sexual wiring and drive is, quickly reaching a zenith point of energy.
What it's supposed to do.
What it's supposed to do, but then you've got your early sexualization by pornography, and then you've got the message of no big deal from the world and a very big deal from the church. So you got this clash, right? The church is saying this is horrible, and sexual sin sometimes elevated far too high, like it's almost like the unforgivable sin.
Yeah, right.
Like, so you got that message from the church, you got the no big deal message from the culture, and then you've got early sexualization just driving this thing. So the Christian young male, speaking as one, when I turned my life over to Jesus at 15, the message was, okay, this is a torture chamber for me because I've got all this longing for sexual intimacy, which I know, based on what you said at the outset, I got that Christian messaging. Sex is good. You didn't have to convince me of that. I didn't, in no case did my Christian subculture tell me that sexual intimacy was bad. They would just like, wait, marriage, and
Yeah.
rightly so. So I was holding out marriage as the time when all of those problems would go away. And I think I implicitly accepted the idea that, okay, it's tough to be a Christian unmarried person because I knew that sexual expression was going to be reserved for the covenant relationship. But I put so much expectation on the covenant relationship, right? An expectation, a sexual expectation that was an undue burden.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you can relate to this at all. And then when you get into a marriage, and now you're connected not with a two-dimensional pornographic image,
Yeah.
right? Which never says no and doesn't have a period, and there's no
Right.
restraint. Now suddenly you're still having to grapple with sexual self-control.
Yeah.
Talk about that. Did you experience
Yeah.
the same thing?
100%. I think what broke me was the fact that early on in my marriage, I chose to continue to look at stuff on the internet because when she would say no, I was so broken
Yeah.
that I would just go straight to this thing again.
Right.
And it was like, and that was my journey. It's like I eventually came to a point in my brokenness where I was like, whoa, this isn't okay. But there was some like weird cultural phenomenon from the church that said, well, this is awful. You shouldn't do this. How dare you be,
broken.
How
what a
dare
pervert,
you?
Whatever.
How dare you want to have sex with a future spouse? Like it was like a weird. I grew up in the Catholic Church, so it was a little different.
Yeah.
And it was almost like you needed to have this complete control. And then for me, I early on, because of my early exposure to pornography, I used it as a coping mechanism a lot.
Right.
And so when I got into my marriage, I thought, well, now you're my coping mechanism.
Exactly.
Like this is my coping mechanism now. And guess what? That objectified my wife.
Yeah.
That made her feel awful.
Right.
And thus, we didn't have sex for a while because it was like, well, I'm not an object. I'm not,
Right.
And then, so what that did, perpetuate an issue in my life where it was like, well, if you're not going to give this to me, then I'm just going to go find it myself. And and that's, I think, the deeper thing is my brokenness drove, for me, this. And so my Christian culture, this dark side of the underbelly was that I'm an awful human being for wanting this.
Right.
Instead of helping guide me into this idea that it's not a coping mechanism, it is a thing that you should be experiencing together.
Yeah, that's so good. Like to recognize that the desire for sexual intimacy itself is good. But I tell people it's nuclear. Sex is nuclear.
Right.
And so as a nuclear energy source, right? Sex can be used to light a city or flatten a city, and it can be used to light a marriage or flatten a marriage. And it then, what your revelation was, Alex, was that my sexual design and wiring is separate from its biological function. Like it had served for me like a drug. It had served an escape. It was an
100%.
escape.
It was an escape for me.
So it wasn't just the pleasure and a biological function. Now it was like a drug. Or it could have been, you could have grabbed for heroin or going to the mall, shopping, and what do they call it? Retail therapy, right? It was self-medication.
Yeah, I think.
Would you say?
Yeah, I would. And I would say there's a quote in here that I kind of wanted to say because I think it really speaks to this. And it's what I dealt with and what our young people are dealing with. It says this: anytime something sacred is mocked and the image of God and all involved is denied, there will be victims.
Mm.
Now, a generation of young people are voicing sorrow and regret because of what we defended as freedom and harmless fun.
Yeah.
And I feel like that is what happened, like, around me, was that social media, TV, movies, and pornography itself was proclaiming it's just fun, it's normal, it's natural, and distorted this reality that, oh, you just go have sex with whoever you want, whenever you want. Hey, here's a good one, Rick. The distortion of my generation was that during my bachelor party, I had to be very explicit to say no strippers.
Yeah.
Like,
Right.
and it's like, why did I have to say
Yeah,
that?
right.
Like, why did I have to be so explicit
Yeah.
to be like, no strippers? I don't want to see objectified women.
Yeah.
Well, I'm about to marry the love of my life.
Yeah.
Like, but that's a normal thing
Yep,
for a
'cause it would
lot of,
just be no big deal.
Yeah.
Innocent fun.
yeah.
Yeah. So Alex is really onto something, and I think that, and the article really points this out, several quotes from now students, and that's really the impetus here, is that we've gone from this, Hugh Hefner model,
Yeah.
it's natural, innocent fun,
Kind of started there, right?
to now, it broke me. This is breaking me, and the hue and cry is coming not from my generation, but from the generation that's being broken. So what can we say, just to kind of move it towards an application, what can we say to parents, either parents or students, who are finding themselves in this world? It's almost like they're waking up to the toxicity of it. What are some tools for them as they are grappling with this?
Yeah, well, we all see that we must end this systematic assault on young eyes, right?
Yes.
That was such a good one. That's such a good quote. Systematic assault on young eyes. So, tools, applications. So, first, I'm going to talk about the young eyes because I think that's where my ballpark is.
Yeah.
That's where I operate. That's where I work. And I've turned you onto this system before. It's called Bark. Bark.us. Awesome system to help parents see what their kids are going into, getting into, and also one of the things I love about Bark is they sell Bark phones. So if you have a young kid that you're like, I want to get them a phone, but I'm too afraid to even let them on some sort of freedom of the internet.
Yeah.
Bark has their own set of phones that monitor everything they do. Bark has its own modem, internet modem, so everything goes in through the Bark system and out through the Bark system. And the reason it's called Bark is because what does barking dogs do?
Yeah.
They alert you.
They alert.
They alert you. And Bark is alerting you that your kid's about to step into something dangerous.
Yeah.
And it doesn't just touch on pornography,
No.
it touches on a bunch of other stuff. But what it does is it allows us parent to have a conversation, guardian, caring adult, to have a conversation with a kid about, hey, this isn't what is good for you. And I like to put it this way. You might say, well, it's really hard to have a conversation with my kid about pornography. Was it that hard to have a conversation with your kid about meth? Because they're the same.
Right.
So like
Right.
here's a bunch of young people screaming out saying, I'm scratching my skin off
Yes.
because of mentally,
Yes.
and we're afraid to talk about it because it's uncomfortable,
Yeah.
but really we need to. And so I think
we got to get over it and quick.
and quick. And so
Yeah.
that's the first application I would say is get a Bark.us, Covenant Eyes,
Yeah.
something like that to monitor your kids' internet behavior.
That's good.
If you're an adult dealing with this, what I would tell you to do is talk to someone. The first step you can do is bring it to the light. There's some awesome ministries like Celebrate Recovery where people who have gone through similar stuff to you can help you and walk with you. And there's a lot of other ministries out there. And I'll offer myself and Rick as people that are willing to talk to you. And if you're a woman dealing with this and you don't feel comfortable talking to a guy, I know that there's women here at the church that would be willing to talk with you and work with you. And so that's I think the biggest.
Yeah, and let me underline just the safety of that and call you into that kind of confessional living, because number one thing that's going to keep you locked in the prison of the addiction of pornography is not talking to someone. And so if you need to hear it again from two of the spiritual leaders of our church, I have consumed pornography. That man over there has consumed pornography. So you're not alone
Yes.
if you're a struggler. And then we could all struggle together instead of feeling like some of us have got this cased and surrounded and others are just deviants, right?
Yeah.
So don't feel like that. Yes, can there be victory? Yeah, absolutely. Substantial victory and increasing amounts of sexual purity in our lives, especially as we realize that, as Alex found out, isn't it about sex? As it
No,
turns
it's
out,
not.
it's about the idol of escape, that this will be a God to me. It will scratch an itch. It will make me feel good when I feel bad. And it could
100%.
be anything. It could be any. So it's not fundamentally about this biological thing that's icky and perverted.
It's a symptom.
It's a symptom of replacing God with something that's a temporary relief because you're under stress, because you're worried, because you're afraid, major transition in your life, or you're feeling injustice even. It's like, I deserve something. I deserve this.
Can I speak into that a little bit?
Absolutely, go.
So yeah, we feel that way. And one of the things that really helped me was Fight the New Drug comes out with like articles from ex-porn stars about the awful things they endured. And that helped me. Because I got to be like, wow, the industry is not good.
No.
Because it like glorified for me. Like at times I'm like, wow, they must make millions of dollars and and they must live the life.
They love this. It's like, no.
No,
In
that's
fact,
awful.
Abuse and neglect. Yeah, I saw an interview the other day of a woman who was completely swindled into a quote unquote modeling session. And in the middle of flying her into a remote location that got her away from her support network, it was imposed on her by, well, I mean, there was no physical assault, but there was everything short of
Manipulation.
bribery, manipulation, and threats. Threats was the key. The threats to her physical safety and the safety of others that she knew were key to her then making pornography. But then when she went to trial and pursued those pornography makers, she won. But they had lawyers. And the lawyers were basically, they showed the porn video and said, this is not a person who doesn't want to do this. And what had to be exposed, like you said, is the behind the scenes. What had to be exposed was
The not edited.
the abuse, the ethical violations, the horrifying conditions, and the manipulation, the blackmail,
Oh yeah.
the drug addiction, the sex trade, all of that. That's the dark underbelly. And you say to yourself, that kicked something in my brain.
Justice.
Right? It said, yeah, holy moly, I'm a person who cares about people, and to think I'm contributing to abuse and neglect and oppression of women.
Because one of the things that I talk about a lot here is that sin splashes.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't just impact you; it impacts those around you, and I had to realize that myself. And it took me realizing that. That's why I say it. It's like I came to this
Huge
conclusion.
wake-up call.
It's like, hey, my wife's being impacted, my family's being impacted, my parents are being impacted, this girl on the screen's
This
being
unnamed
impacted.
Human.
This guy on the screen's being impacted.
Yes.
There's so much going on there.
Yeah. Yep. So I hope you hear that, AC3 and whoever else is listening in, that this is a call for massive amounts of transparency, because we have a saying around here: you get real, you get healed. And if you don't get real, you are going to carry something, and it's going to be a burden, and there's going to be something it's going to cost you. It's going to splash. It's going to affect you, the people around you. And wouldn't you rather be free? Wouldn't you rather have the whole measure of the freedom for which Christ set us free? That's what the Bible says.
And
It
there's
is
hope.
for freedom that Christ set us free. What a fascinating redundancy, right?
It's like,
Paul
wait,
says it is for freedom. Well, what did he set us free for? For freedom.
for freedom.
Because
He wants you to be free.
freedom is its own reward, to be free of the burdens of sin and satanic manipulation and ways that the enemy would harvest us and keep us ineffective. So, AC3, I hope you're benefited by that conversation. And as always, we make ourselves available for help.
And two more words. Billie Eilish, if you're watching, there's hope for you.
That's absolutely.
And for the rest of us, there is also hope. I just want that to be clear. And we look forward to talking to you again.
That's it. Your experience of the dark side of what Christianity has always labeled sin, there's a reason for that. It's because there's a designer
Yeah.
sex. It isn't just it's bad because it hurt you. It's bad because it violates a good God's good design, and that good God has a good plan for all of you. So keep that in mind, and until next time, we'll see you here on Fireside Chat.
Fireside.